Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities and Miniatures, and boy, oh boy, do I have a treat. Well, for myself, but I guess by proxy for you guys as well. Today, I have the joy of finally putting together the King of the Monsters from Lord of the Prince Patreon site. So, just a little background knowledge. I am a lifelong kaiju movie fan. We grew up, we've seen them all, we own them all, I've watched them all countless times. My kids are probably just as big, if not bigger, kaiju fans than me even. So to me, this is a really special model. I mean, when I showed it to my kid, he's like, oh my god, you have to print that immediately. And I did. So we have our good old witch hunter friend here, just as a size indicator. And nicely enough, everything in this model was pre-supported. Most of the bits were going to be hollowed out, with the exception of the arms and the head. Just to give you an idea. So there is one of the limbs. I am looking for his arm, and now I don't see it. Did it disappear on me? Ah, it's hidden under his legs. Alright, so here are the arms. I use this funky blue resin I got off of eBay, and it's interesting in that it looks pretty opaque, but then like at the edges it's almost translucent. I don't get it. It's kind of funky. But everything printed off okay. I used some settings I had gotten from One Page Rules to get their stuff off of the print bed. Sometimes I've had difficulty with that. And the nice thing about this, besides being all pre-supported, was that everything was offered with either regular supports or like extra beefy chunky style. And I figured I went with those just to be on the safe side, because I don't trust my printer and I don't trust my supporting and settings, so I figured just to be on the safe side, and that's what we're going to do. So we've got our head, we've got our arms. Let's start putting the actual body together. So this is the front part of the torso. The torso itself is two pieces, the tail is two pieces, and then we have the base as well. You can see here there's a lot of marks. This one isn't as bad, I guess. Never mind. You can see a little bit of pock marks from where the big, thicker supports were. But in the end, when we have everything put together, I don't think that's going to be as much of an issue. Most of these torso pieces and the tail pieces took up the bulk of my Sonic Minis print bed, so be aware of that. Maybe it was just the legs that had the really nasty scarring. The colors don't really match up here because I think I printed this one first, and it's a little bit more of a greenish blue because I had a little bit of leftover beige mixed in there. So you can see it's already starting to get some bulk. Pieces fit together pretty nicely, I gotta say. A little bit of liquid green stuff or some kind of putty in there is probably going to help hide the seam lines if that's a big issue to you. Next up we have the tail pieces. Like I said, everything has been pre-supported. Now, to be really picky, and if you wanted to get really, nerdy about it, technically this isn't Godzilla's crest style, but I think for purposes of making sure that they don't get litigated to hell and back, gonna want to make sure that that stays that way. And then we have, as I almost knock everything over, the remainder of the tail. You can see a little bit of those marks from the sprue supports, whatever you want to call them. But again, considering where they all are, none of that's going to really be able to be seen, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. So again, tail is quite long. Somewhere... Oh, I'm missing his legs still. Okay. Let's at least put the pieces in order, and you can see it's starting to fill up the screen. Oh, that's why you don't keep bases laying around everywhere. So the legs, we have one leg that is a bit longer than the other, and the other's kind of bent over. It's because he's going to be perched on his base. Here is the only error I got, and I think that's just because I didn't fit it very well on the print bed. The scales right here didn't come out correctly. And that's because I tried to cram as much of it onto the print bed as possible. I do think that I fit both legs and the arms on one plate, the tail and the head on another, and then each of the torso sections had to take it on their own. So that's like, what, 4 or 5-ish print jobs? And it took a long time. Finally, there's going to be the base. Now, interestingly enough, there's 2 versions of the base. I took the more generic rocky outcropping version. However, there is a bit more of a modern one where you have like building rubble, there's a car or 2 on there, there's pipes all smashed up and sticking out. I think with the typical rugged rock base, you can get away with using him, number 1, in just about any system, and number 2, it leaves things open in terms of scale. So if you wanted to have it scale up or down, it's not going to have oddly positioned, oddly sized cars laying around in there as well. So just a thought. So that is all the pieces, and I gotta say, everything was super smooth other than my own printing error that's not going to make a huge difference right here. And obviously, once we've got everything all primed up, I think it's really going to make this thing shine. So give me a moment. We're going to grab the pieces. And I got to say, these are big chunks. If you've ever put together any kind of like the resin or vinyl kaiju kits, garage kits, stuff like that, you should have an idea of what to expect. And you should know the prices of those kinds of models, not cheap. And I also got to say, considering how much resin is used and the fact that everything's hollowed out, I'm still using the same bottle. I thought I'd be like down 2 bottles by now to finish off the whole thing. Maybe if I'd gone solid and not hollowed, but I don't want to do that. That's just a massive, massive amount of resin, and this took enough as it is. So give me a sec. We're going to put them all together, and we'll get them primed up, and I'll show you. Maybe I'll grab some other kaiju while I'm at it. So hold on one sec. Dun, 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 dun. Cymbals clash. Dun, 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 dun. So yeah, this is a very preliminary spray job. I just went and used a light gray on it, partly because the mix of blues and beiges and peaches that ended up making whatever concoction of resin mixture I had there, it was really hard to discern where all the joints actually were. But at least now I've got a good idea. I actually started filling some of them in, but I'm not completely done. And funny enough, I'm actually going to go back and hit this with a black matte rattle can, because I think it's going to be a whole lot easier to get things started, and then using like a nice dark green to dry brush all of his scales. So yeah, for the most part, everything seems to have turned out quite nicely. I am super duper impressed, other than my shoddy printing job as always. And what's cool is with his perched base that he's got going on here, you can have plenty of stuff actually still go base to base contact with it for whatever kind of skirmish game you're playing. So that is a nice touch. So I just have like a creature caster model right here. So you can see, I mean, with no real interruption, if you want to have them swarmed with like a Tyrannid army, it would totally work. If you want to have things crawling around on the base, like our witch hunter friend here, it totally works as well. It's just a big, impressive model. But then again, the big G always is impressive. We're just going to have them tip over like that for the moment, just to get a good sense of scale. Obviously, with our witch hunter friend there, if you wanted to use it as some kind of big Xeno insurgent thing with a marine, but more appropriately sized, we could grab an Imperial Knight, and even then, I'd say that's a good match in terms of size. If you wanted to compare it with some actual kaiju figures, I've got the GMK Godzilla right here, who doesn't even fit on the screen. He actually is a little bit larger than a traditional, typical vinyl kaiju figure. But just to give you a good sense of scale, I'd say our Godzilla right here is in pretty good company. Going with a couple of more traditionally sized ones, I don't have a smaller Godzilla figure. I do have Mirukuron and Salamandra if you want to get a good sense of kaiju scale. Oh, and we got King Zorus. King Zorus is on Sunset from 7, Ace, and 80, if you are curious about where all these guys come from. So I think if you wanted to have him scaled up with a bunch of kaiju hanging out on a shelf, I think he's going to be in very good company. But I mean, honestly and truly, this is an impressive model. I am super happy I got it printed. I am super happy that I didn't have any major malfunctions, and I mean, it's a Godzilla fan's dream come true. The only thing I think that can top this is if he has a rival coming out in the near future. Now, I know most people would want Kong or just some kind of big generic gorilla, since, you know, that's all the rage right now. But nope, this High Lord Tamberlane wants Monster Zero. We need Monster Zero. Not even Mothra. I want Monster Zero. We need a 3-headed space dragon. That's what we need. And honestly, especially because GMK, the guy that this is from, is honestly probably one of my favorite Godzilla movies, just where they kind of, you know, flipped the script a bit, had Ghidorah being the big hero and savior. I thought that was kind of cool. Plus, a lot of the beginning of the movie takes place locally where my in-laws live in Niigata, so that was kind of cool too. So, I am rambling at this point. Get this while you can. It is such a crazy deal. If you just back the Patreon, even for 1 month, for $10 to have the files, have them all pre-supported, have the beefy, extra chunky, big, thick G-style supports to make sure this thing comes through in one piece. I mean, I say go for it, because you know it's going to be more expensive later on. So I will put a link to Lord of the Prince Patreon page, as well as their My Mini Factory page if you've discovered this later on after the deal. Shame, 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 but it's okay. We all make mistakes at some point or another. And honestly, kudos to Lord of the Prank. Kudos to everybody who was involved with this sucker. And I absolutely am looking forward to getting him painted up, hopefully in a similar scheme to our GMK friend right here. And I see there are Dweghom and turtles falling from the skies. With that said, though, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye.